him and I would have gotten to some sort of, penis measuring competition. Who's got the bigger one? Girls always get turned off. Oh God, guys, here they go with their stupid guy-like challenging thing. Girls would have got turned off. They would have gone and done their own thing. Maybe him and I would have been friends, maybe not. I don't know. But, as long as I was playing his game, I was never going to win. So luckily, I did not give in to my second impulse. So what did I do instead? And again, I like to tell this story because I really think it highlights some of the most common mistakes, what I often refer to as taking the feminine role in conversation. And it really helps highlight luckily, the course of action I chose to take instead, I think really highlights more the masculine role. So what did I do in that situation? I realized, because I've been in his position before, I can relate to him perfectly. What does he want? He wants that validation. And so I was going to give it to him. So what I started to do, I became his biggest cheerleader. I started, anytime he told a story, no way, that's awesome. Shut up. I did something like that. It wasn't nearly as cool. What was that like? That must have been incredible. That's really amazing, dude, and that's sweet. What was that like? Tell me more about that part. Did you do this or did you do that? Crazy. That's sweet. I wasn't holding myself out of the conversation, right? I wasn't slinking back into my corner, and I wasn't trying to one-up him. I was very much a part of that conversation. I became as active a member of that conversation as anybody else there, right? But it was all, I let him keep his stage. I let him keep the spotlight. So this is what I really think, if anything, the masculine role in a conversation is. It's certainly not feeling sorry for yourself, making excuses, holding yourself back, woe is me, victim, 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 right? And it's certainly not trying to steal the center of attention. I really consider that to be the woman's role more on that in a second. But what's the masculine role in a conversation? It's really, really simple. It's to set the framework, to set the stage, i.e. the stage to which they can start talking more, to get them talking. And then it's to provide validation. It's to provide your own source of, I like this. I think this is good. That's awesome. We need more of that. Not so much of that. Right? Do I want to be the jester in that situation, or do I want to be the king? And so I like to say, those are really, they really do a great job at highlighting both the biggest mistakes that I see guys make when I'm working with them in conversation, and it also highlights what they should be doing instead. Biggest mistakes I see in conversation, really, really simple. Number one, well, physical. Number one is definitely physical body language. We can talk about that way more, in the Q&A session, anything. This is all about conversation right now. Number one, physical. We'll leave that off the table. But in conversation-wise, the next two biggest things that people screw up in conversations, not doing anything, holding themselves out of the conversation because they're just feeling sorry for themselves, making excuses, either not approaching or just kind of like, in the group, letting everybody else talk, feeling like, oh, I'm just left out of the group, number one. And number two, trying to make themselves the center of attention. Trying to look at me, look how funny, look how charismatic, look how interesting I am. And like I said, this is my biggest mistake. Whenever things don't go well with me with a girl, and it happens, whenever it happens though, it's only one reason, because I'm making it all about myself. I'm not making it about her, right? As interesting as I can be, as funny as I can be, as well as I can hold a spotlight, so to speak, I can't even come close to touching a woman when she's fully lit up. When she's just completely on, like I can't even be half as magnetic as she can. Sometimes I think I can be, and I wish I could be sometimes. I have that tendency to want that a little too much. But I still really consider that the feminine role. That's what she was born for. The feminine was the flower. The feminine is the spotlight. And so the second biggest mistake I see is when guys try to take that away from her and make it about them instead of making it about her. One of my assistant coaches, she coined the term, it's much better to be interested than to be interesting. because that's really your two big goals in a conversation. Not to try to impress her without how funny or how whatever you are. It doesn't work. Consistency will always falter. What are your two jobs in a conversation, woman? One, get her talking as much as possible. Two, make her feel good about it when she does. That's it. That's all you have to do. The most common line I use to open up a conversation, or I have my guys use to open up a conversation, hey, how's it going? It's not your job to try to be funny or interesting and win them over. It's not your job to say the right thing. It's just your job to start the conversation. It's your job to just get it going and then see what she has to offer. We'll talk a little bit more about how you make that happen specifically, don't worry. But I want to emphasize first and foremost that if you go in there just trying to impress her, it's always going to fall flat. So the goal is, of course, to get her talking. How do you do that? How do you get a woman talking? Several ways. First, simple. You ask them a question. You guys all know this one, right? Nothing mind-blowing. You ask a question, and then they respond in some way, shape, or form. I like this. I don't like that. The problem with questions, though, it's too easy. Once again, you guys all know them, and the biggest problem with questions is we end up overusing them, right? It just becomes how many times you fall into interview mode, doing all the talking. Oh, cool, what do you think about that? Great, great, great. So what do you think about this? Oh, nice. So have you been there? Question after question, and she's just answering, right? And it feels like you're the one doing all the work. Once again, if you ever feel like you're doing too much work in the conversation and you're not getting as much back in return, it's because you're doing too much work in the conversation. You're trying to do both the female role and the masculine role. I can't do that and be successful, ever. You're trying to give the foundation and give her the validation, but you're also trying to be the center of attention too. And so yes, when you're trying to take on both those roles in the conversation, you're always going to be doing way too much work, and you're never going to get anything back in return, right? So that's why you can't just keep battering with questions over and over again, because eventually, well, it's going to fizzle out. So how else do you get them talking other than the simple question? I think this is important. And of course, physical always matters. Nothing's going to get a girl talking more than solid, dominant eye contact, holds them in place, a facial expression that says, hey, everything's all right, nothing to worry about, everything's cool. Physical dominance, something I teach, touching them, moving in close, using your body, using the space between you to turn her on and to trigger her. The physical stuff will always get her talking and getting her excited more than anything with your words ever can. So that's why I usually really focus and really harp on that stuff. But in terms of just conversationally, how do you get her talking? Of course, there's the questions. Those run out too much. So the next thing, how do you not fall into that question interview pattern? Sometimes it just happens. Sometimes she contributes back to the conversation and it just flows, right?